Ladies and gentlemen, are you prepared for a new build? I hope so, then this will truly be mind-boggling. You will so love to play with it, I tell you. There was actually one build in the build ranking list that was so powerful and so perfect, and I haven't managed to adapt it with the new Northern Traveler stuff and Invincibility glitch, because it was so perfect that it just didn't fit in it. But now I have solved that puzzle for you. Are you prepared for the new Hyper Hybrid? With 100% crit, up to 625% critical damage, 90% melee resistance, over 16 million peak damage, with ISO enhanced invincibility glitch and the 2 kills reset. This is truly awesome madness. And this is a hybrid, so you can choose your own playstyle. You can play as Assassin, Warrior and Hunter and be overpowered at the same time for all your playstyles. And you can also choose your weapon of your choice and deal the same damage literally with every weapon. I will show you the damage for every weapon type with this build. And there's also some hidden bonus damage. I will show you later how that's working. So no matter if you play with swords, with daggers, with blunts, axes, staffs or spears, this build is probably the last one you will ever need, at least for this week. And of course, this is also my new daily favorite build. I'm running around with the sword version, which is even the weakest one. You can have much more damage with any other weapon, but you guys know I like to play with swords. So what you see here now will be the weapon with the least damage. So be prepared. We have 1 million damage with the sword light attack. Of course, that's a little bit increased because we attack from behind and overnight. We have 1.5 million damage with the heavy attack and we have 4.3 million damage with the charged heavy attack, and that was even during daylight. Then we have 2 million damage for Ring of Chaos, we have 8 million damage with Fury of the Bloodline, and we have a whopping 16 million damage with Overpower Animation Cancel here on that Sleeping Soldiers. And of course we are also invincible with the ISO enhanced trick. We deal 8 million damage for the Iris activation damage and around 1.6 to 2 million damage normally. But on Polemark you can even easily get over 30 million damage with that ability. And of course any kind of assassination is no problem with this build. You can assassinate every enemy with just a normal assassination, dealing way over 3.5 million damage. That is absolutely enough to overrun any mercenary even on Nightmare. You can do that at nighttime, at daytime, and you have plenty of room for your damage. But of course a true hybrid wouldn't be perfect without Hunter abilities. We have 3 million damage with the multi-shot, we have over 4.6 to 5 million damage with the devastating shot, and we have even up to 6 million damage with the predator shot. Before we check out the build, special thanks to my super fans Bruce, Black Susano and Grateful Golem. If you also want to support the channel or simply need some build advice, then check out the YouTube or Patreon membership perks, and I will see you later in our private Discord chat rooms. I will show you all 6 versions here in the inventory, but we will start off now with the sword build first. As you can see, we have 108,000 warrior damage and 550,000 assassin damage. And thanks to the bighorn bow, we also have 108,000 hunter damage, because the bighorn bow simply uses warrior damage as your hunter damage when you shoot your arrows. And we also have the bonus damage here because we use 50% damage while at maximum bounty. But you don't have to be afraid that you have to run around at maximum bounty every time. Of course it's easy to do that at max level and just kill off every mercenary and stay at that. But you can also simply use the 30% all damage engraving. That is also possible, but then the bonus would be a little lower. Both of these engravings, the 30% all damage and the 50% damage at maximum bounty, work in the same way. They only apply on certain conditions, and so they are not immediately shown here in the inventory, but they simply add 30% or 50% to your base damage for all your damage types. So we can actually make the amount of bonus damage visible when we take a look at our sword here. We have a sword with assassin damage, damages sword, 50% critical damage, and then we use the 100% damage but health capped to 25%. So when we simply use a sword with the same engravings but without the 100%, we see that the 100% actually makes up 40,000 warrior damage and 123,000 assassin damage. While the assassin damage is always the same, 123,000 at maximum level, the warrior damage strongly depends on your weapon damage factor, so that is different for every build. An additional 50% of that for the damage at maximum bounty would be 20,000 warrior damage and 61,000 assassin damage. When you only use the 30% all damage, it would be 12,000 warrior damage and 37,000 assassin damage. So the 50% damage at maximum bounty acts like a 50% Falx engraving but without reducing your health. And since base damage is very important here for our assassin damage, having over 600,000 assassin damage is much important here to be able to overrun all the mercenaries. So that is the trick, using the Falx with the 100% and the 50% from the damage at maximum bounty or 30% from all damage. That gave us enough base damage to be still able to overrun mercenaries on Nightmare in this build and add all the crazy engravings, the ISO enhance, the Northern Traveler and the 90% melee tank into this build. On the right weapon slot we use the unique Spartan Javelin with assassin damage, damage spares and 30% melee resistance. You can only get this spear from the Mykonos questline when you follow Taleta's quest and kill all the 3 Athenian commanders, even the last one on Delos Island. And we engrave it here with convert 50% assassin damage bonus to all damage. We use assassin damage as a base here for our hybrid build because we can simply amplify our warrior and hunter damage with the bighorn bow, but we cannot amplify our assassin damage. So when we convert our assassin damage, we get 50% of that to warrior and hunter, and then we can use the bighorn bow to multiply that by 1.6, so in fact we have 100% assassin damage, 80% warrior and 80% hunter damage. That is the maximum output when you do it that way with the bighorn bow. Of course you could also go for dual weapons, then you simply have to use another sword with assassin damage, damage swords, critical damage, and then engrave convert 50% assassin damage to all damage on that sword. That will give you 129,000 warrior damage, and when you remember, you will also get 20,000 on top, so in fact you will be at 149,000 warrior damage. But using the Spartan Javelin is the recommended way, so I will switch back to that. On our bow, as already shown, we use the bighorn bow. The bighorn bow is the only bow in the game that amplifies your warrior damage by a factor of 1.6, because it is bugged and adds all its DPS to your left melee weapon. When we use another bow like the Hades bow, we have only 70,000 warrior damage, and when we change back to the bighorn bow, we will also be back at 108,000 warrior damage. That is the difference the bighorn bow makes, and it only works with this single item. The bighorn bow is a shop item, so you have to buy it for Helix credits or you get really lucky from the Olympian gifts, but you can just use your 200 free Helix credits and get it for free. On the headgear we have assassin damage, 50% critical damage, 20% crit chance while full health, and we engrave the become ISO enhance for 15 seconds. We miss out here on 30% damage swords, but having the 50% critical damage on the head is much more important to be able to overrun mercenaries on Nightmare. If you want more sword damage, then simply play with dual swords and drop the 90% melee resistance to 60%. On our arms we use the stolen ISO bracers from the 3rd episode of Atlantis. That is a unique item which has assassin damage, 10% crit chance, 20% crit chance at full health. Only one of 2 bracers in the game that have 20% crit chance at full health, and we engrave the Northern Traveler's perk here, the minus 50% cooldown. I say minus 50% because it still acts as minus 50% even when you use the minus 15% engraving, because it is bugged and simply still uses 2 kills to refill completely your RS Madness, and when you do that you also reset your ISO enhance. So whenever you make 2 kills you can trigger ISO enhance again and you can use RS Madness again, both without having to wait for 2 minutes. That is basically how the invincibility glitch works. Whenever you get hit, ISO enhance is automatically triggered, then simply immediately use RS Madness to reset your ISO enhance, so that you can get hit again and again without having to wait for 2 minutes. The Persian Warrior's Waistband is also a unique item. It has assassin damage, 50% critical damage, 30% melee resistance, and we engraved it with 100% critical damage while full health. So this is the only belt in the game that can have 150% critical damage, because 50% critical damage is unique on that belt. It can only be found on the island of Salamis in Attica in a special chest in the sanctuary of Ajax. On the torso we then use assassin damage, warrior damage, 50% crit damage and 15% all resistances. I could have used 10% all damage here instead of the warrior damage, but we have enough assassin damage, including all the 50% from the max bounty or 30% all damage, that it is not needed to use 10% all damage here. So instead I go for 20% warrior damage to squeeze out a little more warrior damage out of this build. On the boots then we have 20% assassin damage, 20% crit chance while full health, 100% crit damage while full health, and we engrave another 20% assassin damage. You can actually engrave another 20% damage of your primary when you have upgraded it to the maximum 20%. We will quickly check out the summary. We have 304% warrior damage, 348% assassin damage and 287% hunter damage. That's not really needed. Then we have 60% damage with swords. I've maxed out all 6 weapon types, so in case you wonder why there are 30% for every weapon type, I simply maxed out all the 6 weapon types here to use the same mastery set for all 6 builds. When you use dual weapons you can have 90% damage with swords, and when you use spares you can have up to 120% with this build. We have 100% crit chance at 575% critical damage at full health, but it can also be 625% if you use dual weapons. Then we have a small buff here on fire damage and of course 90% melee resistance. 100% was not really possible with this build because that would be in great conflict with all the critical chance. When you want to make a dagger build instead, then of course you have to use a dagger with assassin damage, critical damage and damage with daggers instead. You do not have to change any of the other engravings here, you simply use all the same items with the same engravings then in the sword build, so if you want to have the explanations then just rewind and rewatch the sword build for that. However, the blunt version has a bit more changes here. We use a perfect blunt here with assassin damage, critical damage, damage with heavy blunts. We simply engrave the same 100% damage. Then we use the Spartan javelin, there are no changes. A bighorn bow, no change here. But then on the breastplate we use assassin damage, damage with heavy blunts, critical damage and 15% all resistances. That is basically the only change here additionally to using the blunt. That will give you 122,000 warrior damage instead of the 108,000 which you have when you use swords or daggers. The X build of course is very similar to the blunt version. We have assassin damage, damage with heavy blades and critical damage on the X. Then we use the same weapons here, Spartan javelin, bighorn bow, the same hood, the same bracers and the same belt. And then we use a breastplate that has assassin damage, critical damage and 30% damage with heavy blades instead of the heavy blunt version. And the boots of course are unchanged to the blunt version. In the staff build then of course we go for a staff that has assassin damage, damage with staffs, critical damage and we engrave the same 100%. Then we use the Spartan javelin, bighorn bow, the same hoods, the same bracers, the same belt. So you can check all the explanations for these items in the sword build if you want. But then we use a breastplate that has assassin damage, 10% all damage and 50% critical damage. We do that because when we engrave damage with staffs on the boots we lose a bit of assassin damage. So to replace that loss of assassin damage we use 10% all damage here on the breastplate. Then of course on the boots we have assassin damage, damage with staffs, 100% critical damage and 20% crit chance. The spare build will have the highest warrior damage of all 6 builds because we have now dual spares here together with the Spartan javelin. We use the spare with assassin damage, critical damage and damage with spares, then we engrave the 100% damage as usual. And since the Spartan javelin also has damage with spares, that is a great synergy effect here. Of course you can also go with dual weapons for any other weapon type, but then you would lose the 30% melee resistance from the Spartan javelin. So when you go with spares, that is the best version if you want to keep the 90% melee resistance tank. The other weapons, the bighorn bow, the hoods, the bracers and the belt are again unchanged, and then we use the torso that has assassin damage, 10% all damage again and critical damage, and the boots of course have assassin damage, 20% crit chance, 100% critical damage, and we engrave 30% damage with spares on them. Of course these engravings can be in a different order, like you see on the staff build, that doesn't really matter. By the way, if you wonder what is this glowing headgear I use here on the screen, that is a celestial headgear in combination with the first civilization set. For the basic version of this build, no matter which weapon you want to use, you need around 200 points. This amount can be easily acquired when you just play the game, level up, do all the DLCs and the tombs, then you will be around 160. When you start a new game plus, then you are basically set to have enough points to make this. Of course you could also start earlier with this and only spend the points on the most important stuff. I strongly recommend you to go with Sixth Sense, that not only doubles your hunter damage when there's an exclamation mark, but it also stuns your enemies for 8 seconds, which you can use to overrun your enemies in a normal assassination even from the front. Then put 2 points on Arrow Master to go either with fire or poison arrows, go for multi-shot. Then you should definitely use Devastating Shot, that is the most easiest shot to use. And if you want you could also use the Predator Shot, that will deal even more damage than the Devastating Shot. But the Devastating Shot is a lot easier. don't miss Archery Master because that also refills your first adrenaline segment. Then I strongly recommend you go for the Charged Heavy Attacks. It is a free ability which costs no adrenaline and can instantly kill mercenaries even on Nightwear with almost any weapon type. Then go for Weapons Master for the crit chance, for the damage, Gear Master. Then use 3 points here on Flaming Attacks to unlock the free fire damage every time. 3 points will prevent you to have any cooldown on that ability. Fire Mastery gives you 40% additional fire damage. Of course you could also go for the poison damage, but poison damage will only be at 25% additional damage. Overpower attacks will deal the most damage here with over 60 million damage, but RS Madness is the real deal, the enhanced version of Battlecry, which makes all the difference here in all those crazy builds. It resets your ESO enhance, it can be activated just after 2 kills when you use this build. That is totally awesome, no waiting time at all for the best ability in the game, period. Then if you also have the Legacy DLC, you can use Fury to refill your adrenaline. You could also use Ring of Chaos of course and Second Wind to heal yourself. Don't forget to go for Shadow Assassin, that gives you 50% critical damage and assassin damage. Rush Assassination is really cool because then you can chain your assassinations. Even though you don't need the additional damage, you also don't need to have critical assassination because your assassin damage is high enough. If you want, you could use Hero Strike, but it's also not really needed and the ability wheel is also very full. So that's more like a personal preference. Of course Hero Strike will be a very good ability in this build, but I prefer to have Ring of Chaos and Fury of the Bloodline in my ability wheel. And don't forget Stealth Master for the additional damage overnight. So let's check out the masteries. In the basic variant I propose to use 12 points here on crit chance and also 12 points on critical damage. If you want to make a spare or staff build, then of course you have to put 15 points here on Aether, damages staffs or damages spares, because that is your most important damage driver, even more than critical damage. Here in the Warrior tab we go for 15 points on Warrior damage, and of course if you want to make a Blunt or an Axe build, then go for 15 points here on Blunt or Axe. Other than that you only really need the melee resistance and the damage restored as health here in the Warrior tab. In the Assassin tab we go for the Assassin damage, so put 15 points here on Assassin damage, and since the main build is a sword build I use the 15 points here on swords. Of course you can also use it on daggers instead. Then go for 15 points on critical chance and critical damage, and also 15 points on damage while full health, and if you still have a couple of points then you could also invest in on damage on elites and bosses. Similar to the damage while max bounty, the damage while full health and the damage with elites and bosses is added to your main base damage, so that is greatly helping your assassin damage and your assassination efforts. The point distribution I used here with all my points simply maxed out all the weapon type damage so that I was able to show you every weapon and don't have to change my mastery points. Of course when you want to copy that you don't have to spend 20 points on every weapon type damage, only spend 20 points on the one you want to really use. Other than that, I maxed out the crit chance, crit damage. I also went for a little bit of headshot damage here. Then in the Warrior tab we had Warrior damage. I maxed out damage with heavy blunts and heavy bladed weapons, but you don't have to do that when you don't use these weapons, of course. I go for a little bit of health, armor, and maxed out the melee resistance, the fire damage, the armor penetration, and also the damage dealt restored as health. Then in the Assassin tab I also go for damage whenever time is slowed down, because that affects every ability. When I meet an enemy, Sixth Sense is triggering, slowing down time, giving me extra damage for every ability. Of course Assassin damage, damage with swords or daggers, only use the one you want to use. And then here max out critical chance, critical damage and damage while full health. Also go for a little bit more adrenaline if you can afford it and use damage with elites and bosses. And please don't forget to subscribe, leave me a like and see you next time.